What if I told you that the moment you learned to smile to avoid punishment was the moment you began to abandon yourself? What if the first time you stayed silent to keep the peace wasn't maturity, but survival? We like to believe we grow into who we are, but, for many of us, our identities are shaped more by what we had to lose. Not our toys, not our innocence, but parts of ourselves, repressed, edited, silenced, until eventually we became strangers to our own needs. This isn't just about trauma in the conventional sense. It's not just about abuse or neglect. Sometimes the most profound wounds are formed in seemingly loving homes, where love was conditional, where obedience was rewarded and authenticity was punished in subtle, quiet ways. Picture this. A child draws a chaotic swirl of color and proudly shows it to their parent. The parent, distracted and tired, barely glances up. Why don't you draw something real, like a house or a tree? It seems harmless. But that child just received a message. What you create isn't valuable until it looks like what I recognize. Multiply moments like that by 1,000. Each time a feeling is dismissed, each time a spontaneous dance is met with laughter or shame, each time anger is labeled bad behavior. Slowly, a child learns the unspoken rule: who you are is not acceptable. So you cut away at yourself, you trim the wild parts, you hide the inconvenient emotions. You adapt, because adaptation means survival, and children, more than anything, are wired to survive, even if it costs them their sense of self. In the 20th century, psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott introduced the concept of the false self. It's a protective mask we develop when our true emotions are not mirrored, accepted, or understood. He observed that children in emotionally unpredictable homes often become hyper-attuned to the moods of their caregivers. They learn to anticipate needs, manage tension, and, suppress their own desires. The result? A socially acceptable child, polite, easy, and honestly completely disconnected from their inner world. By the time this child becomes an adult, they've perfected the art of being whoever they need to be. A chameleon of sorts, capable, functional, but hollow. They chase approval because validation has become their substitute for love. They avoid conflict because peace was once the price of safety, and they overachieve because performance was once the only route to affection. This is self-abandonment, not in a dramatic, theatrical sense, but in the slow erosion of authenticity, the kind that leaves you looking in the mirror, just wondering why you feel so distant from yourself. And the cruel part? The world often rewards this. Society loves the agreeable worker, the empathetic friend, the selfless partner. But beneath that mask is a child still waiting to be seen. History is honestly just full of stories about people who broke under the weight of their false selves. Take Virginia Woolf, for example. Her journals, they really show this constant tension between what society expected of her and the chaos she felt inside. And then there's Franz Kafka, who, lived a life of deep self-division, working as a bureaucrat by day, then becoming a tortured writer by night. Even Buddha, before his awakening, lived a life shaped by external ideals, wealth, and status. And it was only when he let go of all that comfort that he actually began to hear his true voice. To abandon oneself isn't just some psychological condition, it's honestly a spiritual crisis, like a quiet soul death. And yet so few of us even realize it happened. Sometimes we confuse politeness for goodness. And we might even mistake compliance for maturity. It's easy to think that being high-functioning means we've healed, but that's not always the case. But here's the truth. If you were constantly praised for being easy, for not making trouble, or for being so mature for your age, there's a chance what they really meant was, thank you for not needing more from me. Children should not have to earn love. They should not have to decode emotional weather patterns in their own home, and honestly, they should not have to dim their light just to be accepted. And yet many of us did. We learned that anger is dangerous, that sadness is weakness, and, that joy should be quieted. So now, as adults, we struggle to set boundaries. We feel guilty for resting. We distrust our intuition, because the original program still runs in the background. Who I really am is too much. But let's pause here, because this isn't about blame. Most parents were doing their best. Many of them were also taught to abandon themselves. This is generational, passed down not through genetics but through behavior, through silence, through expectations, through survival. And healing doesn't begin with anger, it begins with awareness, with the courage to ask, where did I learn that it was safer to be small? It begins with noticing when you say yes while your body screams no, when you smile out of habit instead of joy, when you apologize for simply existing. The journey back to yourself is not easy. It requires unlearning, sitting in discomfort, and listening to emotions you were once taught to ignore. But each time you honor a feeling, each time you speak a boundary, and each time you rest without guilt, you are reparenting the child within. You are, in a way, whispering to them, you don't have to disappear to be loved. There is a term in psychology called earned secure attachment. It refers to people who did not grow up with emotional safety, but who, through reflection and conscious effort, learned to become secure adults. This is possible, even if you feel broken, even if you don't remember who you were before you started performing, even if authenticity feels, like a foreign language. Because underneath the false self, underneath the mask, you are still there, waiting, watching, hoping to be remembered. So the next time you feel lost or disconnected, ask yourself this: what part of me did I leave behind to belong here? And more importantly, is it time to go back and bring them home? Thank you for watching. If this video resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. Have you been living as your true self, or the self you thought the world wanted? If you found this message meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Your story matters. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to tell it from your own voice. But what does it mean to, bring them home? It's not about chasing some idealized version of who you were before the world told you to shrink. It's about, rediscovering the quiet truths buried beneath years of pretending. Sometimes healing begins not with grand gestures but with small rebellions, like saying no without justifying it, like allowing yourself to cry without labeling it as weakness, like creating something messy and unpolished, not for approval but because it brings you joy. Healing often looks like slowness, like staring out the window without a purpose, like sitting with an emotion long enough to realize it won't destroy you. It's relearning how to be without performing. For many, the journey back to the self begins with grief. Grieving the years spent in hiding, grieving the moments when your joy was inconvenient, grieving the love that felt conditional and the parts of you that were silenced to preserve it. But grief is not the enemy. Grief is the evidence that you cared, that you remember, even if only in fragments, what it felt like to be whole. And in that remembering, something stirs, not all at once, but slowly. A flicker of intuition, a burst of creativity, a sudden refusal to keep betraying yourself just to maintain peace. This is the moment the false self starts to crack. Not from collapse, but from awakening. And yes, it's scary, because when you've built your entire identity around being the good one, or the strong one, or the reliable one, it can feel terrifying to say, I'm tired, I'm confused, I need help. But vulnerability is not weakness. It's how you begin to reclaim your life. And somewhere along the way, you realize you don't have to prove your worth through productivity. You don't have to earn rest. You don't have to apologize for needing more. Your feelings are not inconveniences, they are data. Your body is not a machine, it is a messenger. Your needs are not burdens, they are bridges to deeper connection. The process of healing also means questioning the myths you were raised on. The myth that love must be earned. The myth that your needs make you too much. The myth that boundaries are selfish. What if none of that is true? What if being too much was just your soul refusing to be compressed? What if your emotions weren't flaws, but signals of where you've been wounded? What if the goal of life isn't to be palatable, but to be whole? To reclaim your wholeness, you may need to disappoint others. Let that be okay. You may need to be misunderstood. Let that be okay. You may need to risk being seen in your messiest, most unfiltered form. Let that be more than okay. Because connection built on performance is not real connection, it is obligation wearing a mask of closeness. And you deserve more than that. You deserve relationships where truth is welcome, where tears aren't met with discomfort, but with compassion, where silence isn't filled with fear, but with safety. But first, you must create that space within yourself. Talk to yourself with the tenderness you once needed. Ask daily, what do I truly feel? What do I truly want? And when the answers scare you, don't run. Sit with them. Listen, this is the work of reparenting. Not trying to fix yourself, but learning to love the parts that were never broken to begin with, only buried. And here's something no one tells you about this journey. It's lonely at times, because the world often celebrates conformity more than authenticity, because people may miss the version of you that was easier for them. But every time you choose your truth over their comfort, you come home to yourself. And eventually you find others who are doing the same. People who are also unlearning, who are also sitting with their shadows, who are also tired of pretending. And in those connections there's a new kind of love, one that says, I see you, not just the parts you've polished, but the parts you used to hide. That kind of love is worth the risk. That kind of love is healing. So if you've ever wondered why you feel like a stranger to yourself, if you've ever asked, why do I feel like I'm living someone else's life? Know this, you are not broken, you are not behind, you are awakening, you are remembering, and that is sacred work.